here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's March 6th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yeun, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Park Ki-hoon.
Thanks for having me.
And Kwon Ju-hyun.
Hello, hello.
Now, good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Nikki Haley won her first Republican primary in Washington, D.C. for the 2024 U.S. presidential election. Her victory came on Sunday to break Republican candidate Donald Trump's winning streak. Haley said she would remain in the race despite her countless losses against Trump to serve as an alternative to the former president. She is now the first woman in U.S. history to win a Republican primary. The National Intelligence Service of South Korea has warned that recently there's been an uptick in the number of hacking threats coming in from North Korea, namely against South Korean semiconductor firms. The NIS said North Korean hackers seem to be focusing on companies whose servers are connected to the internet and that they're using the living off the land technique, which minimizes the use of malware and instead uses legitimate programs installed on one's servers to make it harder for people to detect attacks. The NIS cited recent cases of North Korean hackers robbing two companies of important commercial secrets like product design drawings and photos of facility sites. And for those who couldn't say goodbye to South Korea's first natural-bred and born giant panda Fubao, Everland Theme Park is considering holding yet another farewell ceremony. If this does happen, fans will be able to see Fubao for the very last time in Korea, a day or a few days before she's set to fly back to China next month. The original plan was for her to greet fans for the last time over the weekend, but due to high demand, the theme park organizers are considering showing her to the public once more. This time around, people won't be able to see Fubao roam around freely though. Instead, because she's technically under quarantine before her flight, Fubao will be in her cage, and this is stirring a bit of controversy. Some are saying that they're happy to see Fubao for the last time, but others are worried that this might stress her out and that it's a bit too excessive. Now here at the studio, what do you guys think about this idea of a potential farewell party, another one?
Another one. Well, many people who are suffering from insomnia or depression say they feel better after meeting Fubao at the zoo. And people who are tired from the tough competition and a hard life feel happy because of Fubao's cuteness and innocence. So I do understand, it's quite understandable that they would like to have another fan meeting with Fubao, but think about it. Putting an animal in a cage during quarantine. We have done this before several times during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this will make her very stressful. So it's critical to prioritize the animal's well-being over the excessive public appearances. And remember, she's a bride. She's got to be the most beautiful one in the panda world.
Exactly. And if you think about it, if you're a real fan of Fubao, shouldn't her well-being come first? Now, Kyun, what do you think about this potential farewell party?
There's no doubt Fubao was a massive attraction to Koreans from 2011. I think over 5.5 million people visited Everland to take a glimpse of the baby panda. And living up to her name, happiness, giving treasure, she has given so many people who couldn't go to Everland, like myself, something to smile over as her videos were uploaded on YouTube every Monday and Friday. In terms of stressing her out in the sense of animal cruelty, I think 3 years was enough time for people to see her in person, and I just hope they don't announce a final farewell party. And I'm sure Everland made enough revenue from the overall admission fees. And I think, the person who would miss her the most out of everyone would have to be the zookeeper who was with her from the beginning, from her birth. So I think it's best to leave, good memories of Fubao just on our smartphones.
Exactly. I think now is the time to say goodbye. And speaking of goodbyes, it's our main discussion topic of the day. Did you know that March is the month when we see the most divorces? And that's according to the latest survey from Statistics Korea. So Kyun, we're going to start our discussion here. Why do you think that March, ironically, is one of the most divorceful months?
It's actually March right now.
It is.
I'm not looking forward to March. Anyway, according to Statistics Korea, the number of divorces were 10% higher than the previous month of long national holidays we experience here in Korea. That is Seollal and Chuseok. So the survey shows that there are higher divorce rates in February to March and October to November after the long holidays. These figures brought upon a social problem, so-called national holiday divorce. So on these long holidays, it is a custom in Korea for many relatives to gather and enjoy food and drinks after preparing and setting memorial service tables, also known as charesang in Korean. So the preparation and setting these tables with various traditional Korean foods is mostly done by the women.
Right.
So many wives have a hard time with their mother-in-laws, as obviously their cooking styles and even the cooking speed can be very different. So the wives would express their stress and discomfort to their husbands. And usually this is where the argument begins if the husband is not on the same page as the wives. So I've had direct and indirect experiences of married couples that start with light arguments, like during these long holidays, that escalate to a prolonged fight that even leads to a divorce. So maybe this could be one of the reasons for the increase in divorce rates during that specific time of the year.
I think you mentioned a really great point. Now that we're coming back from one of the biggest national holidays, Seollal or Lunar New Year holidays, when it's really great that you can spend a lot of time with your family, but sometimes too much time can open up the opportunities for you to get into conflicts. And here in Korea, as you mentioned, there is that concept of 시월드, and that can be translated into in-laws world, and it's referring to the different conflicts you have with your in-laws. And in Korea, given that we are somewhat still relatively a conservative and Confucian-based society, there are patriarchal traditions. We believe that it's up to the woman to go to the kitchen and cook, or it's up to the woman to go make the chare food, go do the ancestral rites, whereas the husband or the males in the family, they rest outside and watch the TV.
I know.
And then
It's
the in-law, exactly, the mother-in-laws expect their daughter-in-laws to really take care of their son or husbands. And that's where the conflict really spurs out, which is why we might be seeing a spike in divorce rates following the Lunar New Year holiday in March. But apart from that, what do you think are some other reasons?
I do agree with Ki-hun, but I think that psychological and seasonal factors could be considered as well. Springtime often sees an increase in people deciding to end their marriage life, possibly because they seek for new changes, new beginnings in whether it affects them. And March is often seen as a time of new beginnings in Seoul. As you may know, we have already started our new semester in March, a couple of days ago on Monday, not in September. And I guess like many students, many educators went to their new classroom, starting with a new book. That means a fresh start, right? And also as a news presenter here in this broadcasting station, we also start our new season, or 개편 in Korean, in March or in April usually. And as Q mentioned, Lunar New Year or Seollal usually marks in January or February. And this is a time that people think about their New Year's resolutions, new goals for the year. As such, March symbolizes a fresh start in many aspects of Korean life. And as well, as a married person, I do agree with these desires of these. March brings some desire for change, new beginnings. But personally, I've always changed my curtain or my furniture, but not my husband.
Not your husband.
Yes, he's still there.
Exactly. Now, I think you mentioned a really fascinating point, how you referred to March as a yearning for fresh starts. And I think that really encapsulates our generation's perception towards divorce. It doesn't seem to be as negative as before, right?
Right, so there is a big difference in how our generation perceives divorce from the previous generation. So in the past, divorce was seen in a very negative light and something that left a big flaw in your life as well. It was also considered as a big mistake you made and like a failure and something you should really hide from others if you did become a divorcee. Now, just in the space of 10 years, MZers who were for divorce, if there was a legitimate reason, then those who said they were totally against divorce. So in the space of 10 years, the perception of MZ has definitely changed towards getting a divorce. So I think many youngsters have come to realize that marriage is a choice.
Exactly.
And getting a divorce is another choice you can make in your life. So if it means, if it means giving you a happier life, they're not really hesitant to get a divorce. And it's very different to our parents' generation and the generation above, because they grew up in big families in the past and they spent a lot of time together. So it was only kind of natural when they grew up to get married as well and at least have 2 kids like, as a proper family. However, nowadays many youngsters opt for more freedom, individualism, and seek opportunities for more happiness for themselves. Living in a world of, uncertainty from wars, natural disasters and pandemics.
Right. It's not to say that all marriages will end wrong and that you have an option of divorce. I mean, it's always good to tie the knot and stay there. But I think what you mentioned is that our generation understands that divorce is no longer just a negative concept. It could be based on an individual choice, right?
Indeed, indeed. And there are so many shows in Korea about life after divorce, vlogs about divorce, and sometimes they show their kids' face.
Yeah.
Right. And they give tips on being a single mom or dad and stress that life is not over after a divorce. And people are more open talking about divorce, and they are more open-minded about getting married again after a divorce, with over 70% saying that it's fine whether you remarry or not. And one of my single friends who says that she doesn't mind. She has no issue dating a guy who's a divorcee. And another friend of mine who went through a divorce recently he was okay talking about his personal stories about divorce and all the details, procedures involved.
I see. So more people are open to talk about this
They
concept.
are.
They're giving each other know-how, basically,
Yes.
as to how the procedure is like. So we can see that South Korea, a relatively conservative country, is becoming more open with our generation. But then how about in other parts of the world? Let's take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of our viewers had to say on how their country perceives divorce. Let's start with Darlie. Darlie said, in the Philippines, the most common reason first and foremost is a lack of communication and understanding. One party feels a victim, finds what's missing in their relationship, and tries to find it from someone else. Cheers Bell says, falling out of love seems to be the most common way people get a divorce in the U.S. There are messy settlements, alimony, divisions of assets, and if children are involved, custody battles and child support is also needed. Marion said, overworking through economic need, which leaves little time for relationships. Long working hours result in physical and mental exhaustion and suck the joy out of life. So as we can see, all of our viewers really mentioned that divorce is quite common and there's many different reasons why. And as much as our generation here in Korea has their perception towards marriage being changed, what also changed are some reasons that push a couple to get a divorce. So Kyun, why don't you walk us through some top reasons people decide to split up even after marriage?
Sure. So to give our viewers a better understanding of why young South Koreans get a divorce, let's take a look at the screen. The 4 main reasons are personality differences, mistreatment, financial conflict, and affairs. So those reasons seem, I guess, enough for a young married couple to file for a divorce. However, like I mentioned before, our past generations were more worried about, financial difficulties when they did get a divorce, raising their children and not making them sons and daughters of single parents. So they would kind of endure this and sacrifice themselves to keep the family as one and not file for a divorce.
Exactly, but our generation seems to be having many reasons for that, personality differences or split of responsibility. Would you like to add on?
Yes, of course. Well, reasons for divorce among MZ generations often stem from starting with a 50-50 approach to marriage. It's not 반반 chicken anymore. It's not 반반 means 50-50. It's 반반 wedding or 반반 marriage. I read an article stating that the MZ generations prefer to write a chart or an Excel chart for household management. For instance, they outline who's going to do that and who's going to do this. So I'm going to do the laundry. So you've got to wash the children's hand.
Oh, that's very, very specific.
I know,
Very
this sounds
specific.
ridiculous. This won't happen in reality.
Exactly.
Indeed, indeed. And they divide the costs of wedding and the household expenses equally. You shouldn't pay more. Okay, you shouldn't pay 1,000 more. Yes, as dual income earners, they make a joint bank account and they put the monies together for the household management. And conflicts can arise here. If the one uses the money from the joint account for personal reasons.
What's going to happen then?
I don't know.
Who's going to be penalized? What's going to be the penalty?
I know.
And you mentioned that Excel sheet chart. I saw it too. It was ridiculous because they specify all the different house chores from changing the baby's diaper to washing their hands, taking a shower with the baby. Now, it's really difficult because those things I feel, I don't know, I think you could relate because you're married. I don't think it's really easy for you to split those
No,
chores.
you can't
one by
do
one.
that.
Are you
No.
going to tally them down?
No,
But
you don't have time to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it really reflects our generations, I guess, preference stands for equality, and that seems to be one of the main reasons why they want that from marriage. But to find out more about divorce cases from our age group, we're going to include an actual attorney in our talk, so stay tuned for our live interview. We're now going to turn to Kim Jisoo, a lawyer here in South Korea. Welcome, Jisoo.
Hi, morning.
All right, Jisoo, so how common is it for millennial and Gen Z couples to get a divorce these days? Based on your clientele, how big of a proportion does our age group take up?
Well, I've done some research, and recent numbers shows that definitely younger people are getting divorced more and more often. According to the National Statistic Office in South Korea, people in their 30s, many of whom are millennials, obviously, make up about 30% of all divorces now, when back then only 10% were made up by 30s. In other words, people in their 30s today are more likely to get divorced compared to those who were 30 years old in the 1980s and 1990s. And as a lawyer, I've seen this kind of pattern firsthand. The numbers really do back up what I've noticed it over the years. And while millennials do constitute a significant portion of divorce cases, it's mainly because they are at the prime age for marriage and subsequently divorce, of course. Gen Z, being younger, represents a much smaller fraction, but it's an area where we should definitely keep our eye on closely.
Jisoo, what were some notable divorce cases from couples from our generation that you experienced?
Well, there was a high-profile case of an actress discovering her own divorce online, which is still an uncommon practice to observe even for today. However, another high-profile case involving top Korean actresses' use of social media as an expose of her spouse's infidelity is quite common these days. Individuals raising accusations on social medias before officially declaring divorce has become somewhat common and increasingly noticeable. So we can't state this as a trend in the light-hearted sense. However, it certainly signifies a shift in how personal crises are communicated and understood in the digital age.
Interesting. So as an attorney, Jisoo, any legal advice you'd like to give out to the couples, or any words of advice that you could help them think of divorce as the very last option?
Well, I might not have a wedding band on my finger, but I've certainly got a ringside seat to the complexities of matrimonial law, so do hear me out. Divorce isn't just a hefty word, it's a life-altering decision. It can hurt everyone involved, including kids, your parents, extended families, etc. So before you head down this road, I advise you to exhaust every option possible that are laid upon you, like counseling and meditation, and trust me, it's worth a shot. Yet, if you're caught in the storm of abuse, infidelity, or addiction, definitely prioritize your safety and your kids' well-being. If divorce seems to be your only exit, seek legal counsel as soon as possible. And while I might not have my own I do stories, I've got enough courtroom tales to know what sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to choose a path that leads to happiness, even if it means going solo. So after all, it's all about finding the right verdict for your heart and your home.
Exactly. And Jisoo, before we let you go, do emphasize the legal procedure. How complicated is it for one to get a divorce?
It's quite complicated as you can imagine it to be. However, if you hire a lawyer, the whole procedure can be simplified as much as possible.
I see. So we do have to consider that this is not an easy step that we'll be taking. It's an option out there, but we have to understand, as you mentioned, finding the true verdict that we want in our heart seems to be most key. Thank you so much, Jisoo. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, and we're going to end off with our final notes on what we think about the concept of marriage and divorce. And Kyun, I would like to start with you. What do you think about marriage?
Well, marriage is an irreversible decision you make in your life. Therefore, I personally want to be extra careful when I do decide to tie the knot. However, look, everyone gets married in pursuit of happiness, raising children, having your own family. But, if you do have to come to a decision of getting a divorce,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would have to move on with my life and not really hesitate to even get remarried, perhaps. Because like the lawyer said, it's all about the individual's happiness. And if you drag on your marriage life because you have kids, because of financial conflicts or difficulties, whatever, at the end of the day, if you're not feeling happy with your married life, I don't think that's the right option, even for your kids as well, because your kids will obviously feel that
They'll be affected.
because they'll be affected directly as well, and they'll realize, maybe getting married is not the best option in life, and that's not the best way to raise a children. But perhaps maybe telling them, this is why mom and dad got separated, but we still love you and we still love each other. Except we're just choosing our own ways down the road. And I just want to say, we're the MZ generation. You only live once, so why not? I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting a divorce.
I think what you're trying to say is it's really accurately depicting our generation's perception towards marriage and divorce, because though we're not trying to promote divorce, what we are saying that it should come down to your individual happiness. Prioritizing that seems to be key, and not being confined to any societal norm or the fear that you might have a scarlet letter just following you because of the fact that you got divorced shouldn't sway you from staying in a miserable state of mind. But what about you, Chun? You're a married woman.
Yes, I am.
So would you like to advocate marriage, and also your thoughts on divorce?
Yes, speaking on behalf of the MZ generation, I think they place a high emphasis on individual happiness, as you mentioned, and personal growth as well, which could impact a long-term commitment such as marriage. And people in the MZ generation often talk more openly about how they feel right now, posting on social media, and their mental health as well. And this might make them think more about and consider getting a divorce if their marriage is making them unhappy rather than keeping their unhappy life. But it was you who have chosen your Miss and Ms. Right, wasn't it? And you believed it was the right decision at that very moment, and then try to keep it. If not, if you think that was the wrong decision, not the right one, then try to make another right choice.
Exactly. Showing responsibility and commitment is important for any relationship. But at the end of the day, I think our generation can confidently say that we're opening an era where we're accepting more different types of family styles, and we've really expanded the concept of what a traditional family could be. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Park Ki-hoon
Always a pleasure.
and Kwon Ju-yeon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.